Hey folks, Mike here from Nova 3 Labs. Just a little while ago, I posted something on Instagram, Ask Mike Anything. So I'm going to answer some questions that you guys had posted on Facebook and on Instagram. And you'll have to excuse me, I've got like sticky notes in front of me here, I've got stuff up on my screen. So if it looks like I'm looking around scattered, that's because I kind of am. Okay, anyways. So one of the first questions that was asked by Paula. She asked, is your post workout prescription the same for all workouts? For example, do you take BCAAs before a strength workout? Do you take a carb supplement after a strength workout? Really good question. As with any nutrition question, it depends. That could be my default answer for anything. When it comes to what I prescribe for my clients, it does depend. And what it depends on is the session that they have at hand. Very generally speaking, if somebody is doing a group CrossFit class, as an example, and their goals are performance, I will have them use a pre-workout BCA and then a post-workout supplement containing protein and a carb source from various sources. That's a huge generalization. If I have an athlete, let's say that they have personalized programming, and in the morning session, they're doing like a MAP session, max aerobic power cardio, in a PM session would be resistance training and maybe some mixed modal anaerobic type activity. For that morning session, I might have them do BCA pre-workout. Very generally speaking, almost across the board, that is what I recommend, is using BCA's pre-workout. It's very rarely that I won't have a client do that, unless they're very novice, a new beginner. Post-workout though, if it's from, let's say, a MAP session or recovery session, I might have them just deviate to whole food. If it's a strength-based session, I will probably have them utilize a carb supplement along with their whey protein post-workout. And if it's a typical CrossFit class, and this is very key, the client's goals are for performance, I'll have them use also a carb and a whey protein. The ratio on that, that really depends on the client too, right? I'll usually start with a 1-to-1 carb protein ratio. This has come down over the years. I used to default to a 2-to-1 carb protein ratio. I like to start people at a 1-to-1, and then depending on the needs of that client, I might transition them into a 2-to-1, perhaps even a 3-to-1. That's pretty rare though. I hope that answers your question. Once again, it really depends on the client, their goals, and the training program that they're on. Amy asked, this is a great question. How do you know if you're under eating? How do you find the balance of being in a caloric deficit but not too much? That's a really good question, and that's a really, really tough one to find for the client. How do you know if you're under eating? Really, if this is going to seem obvious, if you're hungry all the time, you're probably under eating. Now that said, I have a number of clients who will dramatically undereat and not have any signs of hunger whatsoever. From a personal point of view, I would be in that category. I could literally wake up, start my day running, and if I don't have my food scheduled out, by the time 4 p.m. rolls around, I might be like, holy shit, I didn't eat anything. That is generally the domain of people who burn the candle at both ends and are just too damn busy to sit down and let their body realize it's hungry, right? So you might not know that you're under eating unless all of a sudden you start to have sleep disturbances, poor training sessions, right? Not hitting PRs or regressing. That's when you'll know you're under eating. When it comes to body composition, you might stall out in your goal for leaning out, right? This goes against a lot of what we know as far as the thermodynamics of food, etc. But some folks, when they undereat, they will either stall out on their weight loss or they'll gain weight, right? And when you start to actually feed that machine, so to speak, then it allows their body to use fat as fuel. To figure out exactly if you're under eating, I utilize a couple formulas. I also apply that to what the client has previously eaten in the past from tracked food. And then we try to find a balance. A lot of it is trial and error to figure out what the exact amount of caloric deficit said client needs to be in. It is trial and error. Once again, it depends on the client. So to actually get back to answering your question, how do you know if you're under eating? There's a couple formulas that I use that you've probably seen. One of the main ones is the Harris-Benedict formula. If you just Google it, you can find it online. Uses your age, your height, your weight, your gender, comes up with a BMR, basal metabolic rate. Apply a training factor to that if you train 4 times a week. If you train 2 times a day, there'll be a different training factor. That figures out your caloric intake. Just as an important point, you can't take every individual and jam them into a formula. It just doesn't work that way. People are not static like that. Everybody has different variances. So that's a good starting point, though, to figure out if you're under eating too much. At the end of the day, you do have to be in a caloric deficit to lean out. And this is getting away from your question, I think. But if you're under eating, you will have signs and symptoms outside of hunger as far as your performance goes. I know I was off on a little bit of a tangent there. I hope that answers your question, Amy. Okay, brother of mine, Riley, asked, what type of hair product is best for training? That would be Lay Right Super Hold. No guarantees if you're doing handstand push-ups though, but that's the one that I recommend. I've got a really bad lid going on here. This mane is untamed, so that's why I'm wearing the silly hat. Okay, I'm going to answer 2 more questions. So Alex asked a very good question. Coffee, how much is too much? Once again, Alex, it depends. Generally speaking, most folks that I see will consume 1 to 2 cups a day. When it comes to adrenal issues, it's pretty rare that I'll actually take coffee away from anybody. Contrary to popular belief, coffee and caffeine do not cause adrenal issues. They may exacerbate the underlying issue, but it's pretty rare that it's going to exacerbate it to the degree that we need to take that coffee away. Anywhere in the realm of like 1 cup, 3 cups of coffee a day seems to be well tolerated by people. If you get up into that 4 or 5 and you start to have sleep disturbances, you start to have side effects from too much caffeine, being super jittery, being super anxious, that's probably too much. Coffee and caffeine, just like anything, it's a drug, right? That drug needs to be timed appropriately, it needs to be dosed appropriately for that individual, and it probably needs to be cycled. There probably should be a good time to maybe go off of coffee for a while. As many of my clients know, I'll probably do that once a year. I don't like to do it more than that, just to see what the effects are. Recently, last month, I just did it for 3 weeks. I decided I don't need to do it for 4 weeks. And it was fine, right? 0 issues there, right? So how much is too much? It depends. 1 or 2 cups, maybe 3, you're probably good to go. Last question. Now this was, excuse me for a second, I do need to look at my phone for this because I don't have it up here. This was a good question about not having body composition changes so if you've been on the same macros. So Rennerista, I don't know who this is. She asked, macro question, when you've been on the same macros for 16 weeks and your body composition weight has leveled off and stayed the same for the last 12 weeks, what's the next step? I want to add muscle without sacrificing some of the fat I've lost. Carbs or fat should go up. Really good question. So stalling out on macros that haven't changed. What that tells me, let's say without knowing anything else about you, what that tells me is you probably reached a very isocaloric balance. So your energy out is equaling your energy coming in from your food. Energy out training, energy coming in nutrition. If you want to make body composition changes, so if you want to lean out more or you want to add lean muscle, you definitely need to change. Let's say if your training program's not going to change, you need to change what's going into your body. Now your goal is to add lean body mass without adding body fat. Is it doable? It's totally doable. Is it hard? Yeah, it's really hard. It's usually a long process. I would say if your training program isn't going to change, and I want to talk more about that in a bit, if your training program isn't going to change, and I'm hesitant to say this because I don't know what your numbers are, I would say your protein needs to go up. Now, you might be eating a really adequate amount, and now this might get into a completely different topic of female athletes and protein. Empirically, what I've seen is that some female athletes will require higher amounts of protein to add lean body mass. In the adult human, there's probably nothing more metabolically demanding than adding lean body mass. You do need to be in a caloric excess. Your body has to see, oh, I've got extra calories coming in. I've got more than I need, so I can build more muscle, right? So you do need to be in a caloric excess. To lean out, you need to be in a caloric deficit. Can you add lean body mass and lean out at the same time? Yes, that's called recomposition. It happens over a long period of time. I would say start to play with your numbers if your training program isn't going to change. Now, getting to the training program. Sometimes, and I need to sort of tiptoe around this, sometimes somebody can have their sleep, their nutrition, their supplements dialed, and they're not reaching their goals. Well, what's going on? That would be the stress of their training program. It's not conducive to their goals. Don't get me wrong. I love CrossFit. I love mixed modal sport. It's the reason I'm sitting here today. But it isn't always the best program for a client's goals. If a client says, I want bigger muscles, they need a training program that specifically targets that. If you have a client who says, I want to run the fastest 5K I can ever, maybe doing group CrossFit classes is not the answer. Oh my God, did he say that? Yeah, I just said that. So your training program has to be just as targeted as your nutrition. So I hope that answers your question. Anyways, I'm going to keep it short because I could go on and on answering these questions. I absolutely love it. I will get this posted sometime in the near future, and then I will come back around and ask you guys for more questions. So thank you very much for your questions. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.